my name is Dr. William Boyd, known as Nick of the Dubbing Teasers. I'm going to be tying today what I call the Irish Jig Flexicord streamer. And I'm going to put in the vise a size 4 streamer hook. It's like extra long. And I will start by taking some of this rabbit zonker. I'm going to take a small portion out of the end here for the tail. It'll match what we're going to do later. So we'll get started with some thread first. Wrap that on here. And I'm of Irish descent, so I kind of thought it might be nice to make something green. I have caught trout on this, by the way. I've caught bass as well. I've not caught any brim because I think it's too big to catch brim, maybe. Anyway, I'm going to get some fibers off of here. I'll just snip them off of here. I want my tail to be kind of bushy. So we'll put that on the vise right here and tie that in with the leather side on the top. And that's good and firm. I'm going to work this to the front and I'm going to tie it off because the next step is a little bit time consuming. I'm going to try to do it quickly, but I've got dental floss. What I did was I took this out of the dental spool and put it into a regular sewing spool to be able to dispense it better. And I think before I do that, though, to actually make this go faster, I'm going to do another 1/2 inch and then cut this thread off. That way I can actually wind this faster, the dental floss that is. This is unwaxed floss. I think it's unwaxed. I don't want it to repel water, basically, so I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to try to create a profile with this. This is going to be like the underside of what the Flexicord is going to go over. We'll hold this up and I'm going to try to create a profile actually that looks like that, where it'll start out thin like these tweezers are and gradually get wider the closer it gets to the hook. The way an actual baitfish would look, the front of the baitfish is usually wider in its profile than the end closest to the tail. So this is going to take some wraps, and with the shank being as long as it is, that adds to it too. But okay, so I'm going to begin shortening it on this end. I'm not going to go back that far again. I'm going to wrap up, wrap back this way. Now this time I'm going to stop right here and start wrapping up. So you can see where it's starting already to create a little bit of the profile. It's not as pronounced as it's going to be. All right. It's a big chore to put the dental floss on the spool, but if you can imagine what it would be like trying to dispense this much dental floss off of the dental floss box, out of the box, that would be a problem. It would be frustrating, I suspect. So you can see that profile beginning here. And we're looking good. You don't want to overdo this, by the way, either. But you want it to be thick enough that it fills some of the space that will be created by the Flexicord, which is fairly flat. So we're getting close to being able to just wrap this off and be done with this part of it. All right, now I'm going to get my thread started again, because I need to tie that off and make sure it doesn't come undone. Tie it off really, really well. Do a jam knot there. Cut this excess thread. Now we'll cut this excess floss, and we have that ready to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my thread. This serves two purposes. This will keep the floss a little bit more in place, but at the same time, it'll give me a chance to anchor this Flexicord. This is what the Flexicord looks like. I've got it in a rubber band to keep it in place, but you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And it's hollow on the inside. So I've got a piece already cut off. I'm going to put it inside, wrap it around the hook itself, and you can see how it's taken shape already. And I do the back end first because I can trim this other when I need to. So you can see what we've got. It's kind of got a translucent look. You could, if you wanted to, you could actually put a marker pen on the dental floss and make it black, for example, or red or whatever. I keep it white. I like that translucent look. I'm going to use my extended reach whip finish tool and do just a few whips around here. Make sure that doesn't leave us. And that's done. We'll do this, we'll cut it, and then what I want to do, just for an insurance policy on this thread, I'm going to put just a few drops of the super glue on there, rotating it around. If that wicks into the Flexicord too, that will actually keep it from unraveling, which can be helpful. Now what I want to do next is I need to move this back far enough. I'm going to do my thread around here. So you can see how that body's taking shape already. Do a little jam knot here so that doesn't come undone. And I'm going to use my regular size whip finish for this. Now, I'm going to cut this out. This is excess we don't need, which I knew we'd have, but by creating that, it actually makes it easier to tie this on. Where I knew I would be getting rid of it, but I've got it anchored down pretty well. Before we have any problems, everything's looking great. I'm going to put some super glue on that thread, let that sink in there, soak in. The next step will be to put some dumbbell eyes. With this being a streamer, you want it to be weighted down pretty good. What I'm going to use on this, because I'm trying to keep with that green theme here, the Irish jig streamer. I'll try to hold these in the tweezers, but I'm going to put these dumbbell eyes here. They've got a green background in the eyes with a black pupil, and gold and green I think goes well anyway. So we'll put these eyes in. I'm doing kind of a figure eight to get started. That glue is a little bit wet, so that's actually going to help, I think. It's funny how you get the eyes on some of these flies, streamer flies in particular, and they start to really take shape and almost like they develop personality with that, you know? Okay, wrap this around a few more times. Now, see if I can find some white in here. I think I might have some, but I'm not for sure. I've got some cream. It's light gray, so that'll work. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to get some of this. This is rabbit zonker, but I'm going to pull some of those hair fibers out, and I need to get a fair amount. I want this to look good, so this is going to create a bit of a collar, right? Well, not right behind the eyes, but near the back part of the eyes. When I work my thread back to where the thread is already, that's the part where I want to anchor this down. So that gives it a little bit of dimension, which is kind of nice. We'll cut that excess down out of there. And then what I want to do is I want to tie a rabbit zonker on the underside. And we'll get to that in a minute here. Once I tie it down, we'll put a hackle in there. That kind of hides some of the mistakes, but it also gives a little more new dimension to it. And so I will put this grizzly hackle, and we want to fill this space up, by the way, where the tweezers are. You can see how they are from there to there. I want to fill that up with this hackle. That'll give it a little bit extra bulk. Do a half hitch on the end of the nose. And then, hopefully we can, we'll use these hackle pliers and we'll rotate this in the vise. I'm going to undo this before it becomes a real problem. Right now it just looks funny, but we don't need it to look funny and be a problem. I'm going to try to see if I can get it to fasten back here in this materials clip. Well, I thought I had it there for a second. It's a spring. It's a spring-loaded materials clip there. And we can wrap this a few more times. That's actually looking pretty good. So with that, I'll tie this hackle off. Hold that up, wrap that around. I'm going to actually do a whip on that. Probably do about 10 turns on it so it will stay, because I really don't want to risk putting glue where that hackle is. So there's that. And now I will take the thread up to the very front part of it and do a white nose, a white head, and do another whip finish there. I can actually put some head cement on that. Do the whip on it, and then we've got to work with the rabbit zonker going out the back. That's fairly easy to take care of. And a little bit of glue here too. I think I can get away with that. Okay, so we have that. The last step is to get the right length of the zonker and also trim it, and then attach it to the hook, the actual point part of the hook. It has to be attached to that. So usually you want it trailing out a little bit beyond the bend of the hook. Not so far that the fish attacks that part and then the hook set isn't made. I'm going to cut this at an angle to actually create a bit of a point, right like that. So you can see where that leather has a point on it. All right. Now the next step, and this is the tricky part, is I try to gauge, I'll point with my pointer here, my tweezers. I want to gauge where the end of the bend of the hook is going to be in relation to this leather. So I want to actually poke my hole with the point of the hook there. So I'm going to do that with holding it with my fingers. That way when I stretch it out, whoops, I lost it. I'm going to do this holding it outright. I think that'll actually work better. Yeah. So I don't want to put my hole right here because that won't stretch far enough. I want to put it where the bend of the hook is. So I see where that is. One of the things you can do that actually does work well is you can take your bodkin.
You can hold it. Yeah, there you go.
Take your bodkin and actually make a little bit of a hole already without poking yourself too bad. I can feel that, but okay. So my bodkin's through that leather. Now I want to take the point of the hook and go through the leather in that same area. And you can see how that's coming through. And there it is. So it made it through. And you can see how that has a nice profile. Shake it out here, a little excess fuzz. And I'll put it back in the vise for you to get an idea of how that looks. So we got the rabbit zonker tail, but then part of this zonker is connected to the part that's underneath. Then we got a white rabbit zonker collar with a grizzly hackle backup collar. So there you have it. That's what I call the Irish jig Flexicord streamer.